Good morning. Welcome to Medium Day, and welcome to this session about content curation and Boost at Medium. I'm Terrie Schweitzer, Director of Content Curation at Medium. My team is responsible for reviewing thousands of stories each month, looking for the ones we can boost. What I'd like to share with you today is a set of guidelines that we use to make those decisions and talk through an example of a boosted story. Many of you know about Boost already, but for those who don't, I'll give you a quick one-sentence overview. Boost is our system for identifying the best individual stories on Medium, regardless of who wrote them, and to give those stories a wider audience. Now you can learn more about how this system works via the link in the session information here in Hopin. That's a page called What Happens to Your Post When You Publish on Medium. And if you have trouble getting that link, we'll get it for you later. So these stories that are selected for Boost are selected by real humans who make up Medium's curation team. And the way we choose these stories is outlined in our quality guidelines. We've recently updated those, and there's a story on the Medium blog right now about that update. So I encourage you to take a look at that and give us feedback in the comments there. You're going to have some time for that in this session, but I don't think we'll get to all of them. So that's a place to ask questions and give feedback. What I'd like to do is take a look at the Boost guidelines with you. So let me share my screen here. And hopefully you can all see these. It's easier if you are able to read them later, but I just want you to see what this page looks like and go right down here to the Boost guidelines. And we're going to talk about these three main areas: story content, author's experience, and craftsmanship. I would like to say a little bit more about those. For story content, there's two areas of focus, and that is the reader's life enriched by reading the story? And is it original, human-created content? So a reader's life can be enriched if the story evokes a feeling or an insight, if it helps them feel connected, helps them do something they want to do, helps them learn something new, gives them new insight. When a reader reads this story, do we at Medium feel good about how we've asked them to spend their time and attention? It's the kind of thing we look for this factor. And for original human-created content, we're looking for stories that clearly have a human behind them. So not AI-generated stories. Another part of being original is that the article can't sound like a simple rehashing of other articles or a Wikipedia entry or something we often call a book report. This doesn't mean that it has to be the first article about a topic. It's perfectly possible to write a boostable story on a well-covered subject, but we want to see the writer's originality shining through that. And that's relevant to our next guideline, the author's experience. Does the author speak from relevant knowledge and experience? And for example, if a writer is giving advice, have they tested this advice themselves by doing it? That's really important. That otherwise it's just advice that's been pulled from other sources and is untested. Or the writer can be a subject matter expert in an area that they're writing about. There are many subject matter experts speaking here at Medium today. So there are lots of good examples. Go look at their articles. One thing related to experience and expertise that comes up is a concern about sort of what we think of as credentials. We don't require credentials of writers. We don't require a degree or a title or anything like that. Those are all fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But when we're talking about experience and expertise, we just want to see the writer's experience in the work. Another question we get about this is fiction and poetry. How does experience and expertise come through there? And in that case, the writer's imagination and creativity are part of what the experience that they bring to the story. This is something they've created themselves. It doesn't get really more out of someone's experience than that. So this really does apply to across genres. The last big category of guidelines is about craftsmanship. That is the story well crafted and does the story have impact? Being well crafted is where basic writing skills come in. Does the article have a good title that reflects what the article is about? If a reader feels tricked by clickbait, it's not a good title. Is it well written? Does it use formatting properly? Does it have good structure? All of these things contribute to being well crafted. And as for impact, has the writer crafted a story that leaves the reader with a particular feeling or a sense of satisfaction from having read it? In this case, is the reader going to feel good about having spent their time and attention on the story? These are all of the kinds of questions we're asking ourselves when we review stories for Boost. Now, it's not especially easy to get a story boosted, but you as a writer can feel really good when you are boosted. It's something meaningful. It actually means something to have a story boosted. So what I thought I would do is share a story with you and talk about how it exemplifies these characteristics to give you an example. There are thousands of boosted stories on Medium, but we're just going to talk about one. Hopefully you can see that. This is How to Walk 100,000 Steps in One Day. It's by David Paul Kirkpatrick. I'm going to scroll through it a little bit here and give you a sense of this article, and hopefully we can get a link up for you. It should be in the notes for the session. Right away, you'll see this is a 21-minute read. This is a long article. We get the question a lot of times, what length of article do you boost? And the answer to that is it is very context sensitive. The article should be the right length for what the article attempts to do. Long articles are fine. Short articles can work. Again, the main thing is that it accomplishes what the writer sets out to do. And there should be a sense of understanding what the writer is trying to do. Sometimes a writer goes someplace you don't expect, and that's fine too, but it's all intentional. So that kind of speaks to the length of the article. And as I'm looking through this article, hopefully you can get a sense of how the writer has used images, properly captioned. They've used a combination of screenshots. They've used block quotes effectively. They've used headers, bulleted lists. There's a lot of depth in this article, and that's one of the reasons why I like it so much. So I'm going to pull back up. And I'm sorry, I know it's like terrible to have somebody scrolling through a screen as you're trying to read it. But I'll just leave it there for the moment. And then I'd like to go back to the quality guidelines. Keep in mind what you've briefly seen and relate to the specific article. So story content. Is the reader's life enriched by reading this story? And what you'll find when you do have a chance to read this story is that it has layers of ways it can enrich a person's life. It's really a unique form of a how-to with sort of a memoir feel to it. It's a good, entertaining read, even if you have no intention or interest in walking 100,000 steps in a day. You really become involved in the story. You're rooting for David. You're rooting for his dog, Arthur. And by the end of the story, a lot of readers do start to imagine themselves achieving this goal. There's solid how-to advice there if they want to do that. So definitely it fills this criteria. Is it original human-created content? Yes, clearly it is. The writer is very expressive, has combined writing and photos in a unique way. It's highly original. There are a lot of articles out there about reaching fitness goals, but few of them combine this level of storytelling with the advice. And though this article is about reaching a specific goal, the writer is interwoven a lifetime of experience in how to reach important goals in general. One of the reasons I like this article is that it combines the advice with storytelling. Excuse me. You don't have to do that. It's not a requirement. It's just something that's very effective in this article. That leads me right into author's experience. Does the author speak from relevant knowledge and experience? And yes, this writer has firsthand experience doing the thing they're giving advice on. One way this shows up in this article and in others like it is that he offers tips that you won't find in a usual dry, boring listicle. It's clear that this writer is writing about this subject matter for a reason. He's done it, he's reflected on what it took to do it, and then he's sharing that with the reader. Craftsmanship. Is the story well crafted? Yes, this article has clearly been through an editing process. The content's well organized, the title, subject, use of images all support the reader's experience. The article has a clear structure with specific sections. It includes personal details that are interesting to readers. This has a really good balance of personal detail. Personal detail is great. It helps a writer connect to readers, but too much can be too much. This writer doesn't talk about every bathroom stop along the way. You know, it's not relevant. It doesn't need a play-by-play of what happened, but includes the highlights and the interesting and funny details. Does the story have impact? And yes, at the end of this story, you feel something. You might feel inspired to act on a goal of your own, even if it's not this particular goal. And you've learned something that can help you along the way. I think you also feel like you got to know this person. I think that's a fine impact. You feel connected. So that is my example article. I hope that some of that was useful. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and open things up to questions. So it looks like I have quite a few questions here, and I'll get to as many as I can. But again, check out the blog post on the Medium blog about our new guidelines, and that's a good place to ask further questions if you like or make comments. I have a question here from Alicia. How does Medium handle hateful speech and anger in a story? So that's a great question. We have a trust and safety team, and when the curation team notices hate speech, they escalate it to trust and safety. They don't make a decision about what to do with it. We let trust and safety are the experts on that, so we let them do that. Anger in a story is fine. Anger is an emotion. Sometimes it can be used very effectively in a story. But hate speech is against the medium rules. Let's see, I have another question here. Can stories posted months ago be boosted months later, or must they be newly published? In general, stories are boosted soon after they're published. It's uncommon for one to be boosted months later. It's not impossible, but it's uncommon. I have a question. Is using emojis in any amount something that would affect being boosted? This speaks to being well crafted. Are the emojis being used in a skillful way in the article, or are they extraneous decoration, or are they just distracting? It's very contextual. There, we don't have a rule about emojis. Um, it all goes back to the guidelines, and probably in that case, it would be well crafted. It would be where we'd be looking to make a decision there. Um, let's see. How many stories do you boost each day? Um, it varies. I think we're running close to 80 to 100 right now. Um, let's see. It feels as if many of these criteria are geared more toward nonfiction articles. How can this apply to fictional stories? Are they less likely to be boosted? Um, that's an interesting question because we have gotten a lot of feedback from uh, folks in the fiction world about our guidelines, and that's why one reason we have revised them. Um, I feel like these guidelines can be applied to fiction. And we talked about writer's experience coming through um, in fiction and poetry, and it's the writers creating this that is the experience. Um, well crafted certainly applies to fiction. Um, making an impact on the reader, um, all of these things, I think we boost fiction, and we're always looking for ways to do a better job at choosing which fiction to boost. Um, I wouldn't say they're less likely to be boosted. Uh, I would say that it's hard to write good fiction too. I just uh, it's a hard genre. Let me see. Can you submit an article that you think should be boosted, whether it's yours or others? This sounds like someone is talking about the Boost nomination pilot. And I think Ariel's going to be talking about that later today. That's the program where we have non-medium employees submitting stories for us to review and consider for Boost. And participants in that program submit stories to us. And if you want to submit stories to us to consider it, being part of that program is the way to do that. I have a question from Scott. Will a piece with a particular political point of view be boosted? Um, we're agnostic about politics. It can be if it meets the other guidelines, and if it doesn't violate Medium's rules. Let's see, we're getting close to the end here. Do stories have to be exclusive to Medium to get boosted? Yes, we can't boost a non-Medium story. Let's see, we got about, can ChatGPT help make stories more impressive? Shouldn't it rely more on the author's imagination than the content generated by the tool? Ultimately, ChatGPT lacks imagination. This is a question from Adan. And we don't boost AI generated stories. We do have a distinction between AI generated stories and writers using AI as a tool to write better stories. That's fine. But in general, Medium's not the place for AI generated content. So it looks like that's all the time we have left. Thank you so much for letting me share a story with you and share some of our processes. And again, check out that blog post on Medium for more. Bye-bye.